Just 90 minutes drive southeast of Melbourne, Phillip Island, with its rugged beauty, is the perfect destination for a short break. But in August 2009, that tranquility was shattered when human remains began to wash up onto the shore.
Police are hoping missing person reports could shed some light on a gruesome find at Phillip Island.
The grisly discovery would stun a family.
There was a black and white photo of a tattoo and something about a leg being found, and I looked at it and I thought, what's that?
They say they're confident they're closing in on Rachel's killer, and quickly.
He asked her whether she'd like to come in and see a dissection.
The dark past of a killer would shine a light on the nation's justice system.
This guy is a master manipulator. He had people wrapped around his little fingers, and the system allowed him out to do this.
There is no such thing as closure for me, and there never will be. There never has been any sense of closure at all.
Revelations in court would uncover one of Australia's most evil killers.
God knows what he really did, or even definitely where he did it, because no DNA was recovered from the bathroom where she was supposed to have been cut up.
The murder of Rachel Betts was a crime that shook Australia. In August 2009, 27-year-old childcare worker Rachel Betts went missing from her home in Epping, a northern suburb of Melbourne. What happened to her would leave a family devastated and shine a light on the nation's criminal justice system.
At the start of Rachel's life, Rachel was an only child for about 11 years. I had her at a time when most of my friends didn't have children, so she was very popular with my friends. She was a real asset to the family all the time. She was great with her cousins, my nieces. She was the eldest of the 7 girls.
Rachel was a very loving girl. It's not unusual in a step-parenting situation where the children are not too happy about one of their parents having a new partner and vice versa, and possibly having step-siblings. And Rachel built bridges between my children and the younger 2 girls.
Rachel was really good at making friends with strangers pretty much on the spot. Anybody she wanted to meet, she would just march right up and do so. Very bubbly and very good at making people feel welcome and like they were instantly the most important person around her. Just fun and lovable.
Although we lived together, sometimes we didn't see each other every day. I'd hear her get up in the morning. I always knew she was up and awake and getting ready because I could smell her toast and coffee.
She was always happy and bouncy. She was always happy to see you, happy to help. She was just one of those people who inspired you to be better. She was Rachel. You have a problem, you call her, she's there.
I could always call and talk to her if I was, say, having an argument at home or worried about school or my personal issues with friends or anything like that. She always made us feel that she would never judge us.
As she got older, she began to be interested in other things like education. She really wanted to be a teacher and a carer of children, which might have been influenced by babysitting us all the time.
Rachel had devoted her life to children. By the age of 27, she had a successful career as a childcare worker. But unfortunately, she wasn't able to have children of her own. In late 2008, she met 2 teenagers who were looking for a place to stay. Rachel's caring nature meant she was quick to welcome them into her home.
Rachel had met them through a friend of ours' neighbour, so they started to drop in and they were both having issues at home. So Rachel, being Rachel, went, any problems, you can always come here and stay here.
When Rachel took the girls in October 2008, November 2008, the second one, they really took over her life. And at first I thought that they were the source of the problems. The longer the girls were with her, the more she seemed run down, and I was sort of thinking, well, she's overworked and this is getting too much for her.
She was always stressed about money and being able to get by, basically being able to provide. It had 2 jobs and she lost one of them.
Faced with an ever-dwindling income, looking after the 2 girls was beginning to take its toll on Rachel and left her in an increasingly vulnerable situation. When an opportunity to make some extra money arose, Rachel was keen to take advantage.
Rachel had met a fellow, and this fellow had been working with an older man, and that older man had said to this guy that he was looking for young people to recruit to sell drugs, and for some reason this guy introduced Rachel to him, and as I understand it, came round and did a sell, you know. Oh, look at you, you're trying to look after 2 kids and you're working so hard with 2 jobs, and, you know, you could have the girls through the day and run them around, and at night time you could go out to some nightclubs and pubs or whatever, and you can meet up with people, you can sell some drugs, you'll make a lot of money, your life will be easier, things will be better for you if you do this. How he managed to make that sell, I don't know, but she decided to give it a go. I guess she probably thought I could stop work for a while, see how it goes, you know. The problem with when you're moving with people who take those drugs, rather than just selling it, she was actually taking it. And it began to have quite a severe effect on her after a while.
Rachel began abusing crystal meth, or ice, an insidious drug that is ravaging parts of Australia. It began to take a terrible toll on Rachel, both physically and mentally, and her life began to spiral out of control.
We actually end up having, after living together for years, end up having a bit of an argument, and I moved out in March of 2009. I can honestly say she probably knew me better than anybody, and same for me with her, but by that time I couldn't tell you what she'd been up to for the day. Usually I could tell you what she ate for breakfast, lunch and dinner.
She started to develop some of these symptoms of paranoia, and it was obvious that something was wrong. She said there were all these people she didn't know were coming around. Friends of the young girls were coming around, and she was feeling uncomfortable and unsafe. This paranoia thing that comes with taking these drugs was affecting her. She started becoming delusional. She had all kinds of strange experiences where she thought she was being watched or being followed. She was involved in a car accident where this car came through a red light and she thought that it had been set up and somehow deliberate. These sort of delusional ideas that do come with that particular drug, ice. Her teeth were very important to her. Smile was beautiful. And here she is taking this drug that is making her grind her teeth. And that really distressed me. I cried when I saw she had a baby's dummy by the bed to put between her teeth so that she wouldn't grind them and that she'd protect those front teeth. But my God, what is going on here? And I could see that there was this deterioration in her.
The final straw for her friends and family came when Rachel collapsed at her friend's home.
She went to the hospital to be examined because they thought they may have been drugged and raped. So took her to the doctors to make sure everything was checked out. They were safe, blood tests. The crisis assessment team came because she she wasn't well. Unfortunately, I think it was the drugs that got to her and made her paranoid.
They assessed her, took her to the hospital, got her into rehab to dry her out, and July she was back here with us, with her sisters and myself, and in a safe place.
Despite returning home, the temptations of her other life were proving too much for Rachel.
She had a party one night, a couple of friends around, and the girls were here and they had come out to stay for a couple of nights, and they were getting noisy. The point is to keep her away from any drugs, and there wasn't supposed to be any drugs, so I asked them to leave. Anyway, Rachel took it as an opportunity to go and take the girls and go off to this other place that she had been organising for them to live at.
When she was leaving, she was distressed, and I was quite distressed too. She just felt, I think, stifled, living under her mother's roof again. I remember saying to her that you're being looked after here, that it had been a positive thing that she was here, but I think she felt guilty. And the last words she ever said to me in person were, "If I leave tonight, will you still love me tomorrow?" And I started to cry and said, "Of course I will." I felt like I had only just gotten my big sister back for the first time in quite a while. And to have her leave that night, I was filled with dread. I knew that nothing good could come of it.
What her family couldn't have known was that it would be the last time they would see Rachel alive.
Human remains have washed up on a beach southeast of Melbourne. The gruesome discovery was made by a man jogging along Ventnor Beach on Phillip Island.
In August 2009, the friends and family of Rachel Betts were becoming increasingly worried for her welfare. The 27-year-old childcare worker had, in the last few months, been involved with both drug abuse and dealing, and her loved ones were growing concerned.
I rang her up especially to say to her to please come home here to this house. I said to her, "I'm really worried. You're not safe there. You're safe here. Please come home," I said. They were my last words to her. Please come home.
On the 18th of August, a new story broke about a grisly discovery at a popular tourist destination.
Police are hoping missing person reports could shed some light on a gruesome find at Phillip Island, a woman's tattooed left leg. The tattoo features red and violet flowers on a twisting vine.
The revelation about the tattooed leg set off alarm bells for Sandra. Holding on to the slender hope that her daughter was alive and well, she began frantically calling Rachel's friends.
I phoned Epping and asked the girls, "Where's Rachel? And have you heard from her? Have you spoken to her?" And the youngest one lied to me and said, "Oh, yes, I heard from her about lunchtime, and this isn't right." And so I said, "Put the other girl on the phone," and she said, "Oh no, I haven't seen her for days, and we've been calling and she's not answering." And this was just totally out of character. If Rachel was doing something, those girls would know exactly where she was going, exactly when she'd be back, how to contact her while she was away.
Rachel had disappeared and we didn't know where she was, and Sandra was getting very frantic. She'd started placing calls to friends and family and sent text out to everybody that she thought Rachel knew.
Her mother called me up one time and messaged me, so 12 at night time, midnight, and I've gone, "Who's messaging me at midnight?" And I found out it was a clear call with Sandra, Rachel's mum. "Have you seen Rachel?" So I called up and said, "This is David." "No, I haven't seen her for 2 months. She's supposed to be in rehab." And that's when she told me about the foot they found on the beach, with the tattoo same as Rachel's. So there started, of course, the worry that Rachel may have died or something may have happened to her.
At the location of the grim discovery on Phillip Island, detectives were beginning to arrive at the beach that was now a crime scene.
I was afternoon on call on Sunday, the 16th of August 2009. I was contacted by Detective Sergeant Sean Audley, and he advised that a leg had been found at New Haven Beach, Phillip Island. It was a female leg, a full female leg. It had been severed around the hip joint. It appeared that, I guess, it would be a non-survivable incident that had occurred, so expected foul play pretty much straight away. There was a floral tattoo on the foot, and it gave us something at least to go and start checking our records to see if there were missing persons, firstly, and there's various databases of people with tattoos. They were looked at in the following days, and we weren't really getting anywhere with that. That came to nothing.
Rain got onto the computer and looked up some photos on Facebook, and she saw a photo of Rachel dancing barefoot, and it was definitely the left foot that had the tattoo on it. And that's when I phoned the police and said, look, I think that this is my daughter.
DNA testing conclusively proved Sandra's worst fears. The leg did indeed belong to her daughter. 3 weeks later, further remains were found on another beach, followed by reports of a right leg sighted by the crew of a ferry. Tragically, the rest of Rachel's body was never recovered. Now they had identified the victim, police began to investigate Rachel's background for clues as to what had led to her tragic death. It wasn't long until her associations with the world of illegal drugs came to light.
She was working in childcare till about end of 2008, and after that point in time, 2009, it appears that that's when the drug dealing took off.
Rachel had been given the impression that she could make easy money quickly. It meant for Rachel that she could get that bigger house, have that money for the rent and bond to move myself, herself, the girls, they'd have their own room. It wasn't for a lavish lifestyle, it was so that Rachel felt that she could provide for them. It just didn't work out that way for her.
Rachel's mother, Sandra, was aware that her daughter was mixing with nefarious characters, and one name in particular was causing her great concern. 54-year-old parolee, John Leslie Kums.
I had conversations with her about John Kums and said, this man sounds really wrong to me. And she said, well, he's got a criminal history. I said, well, you've got to avoid this person. This is not good.
A search of Rachel's home in Epping was also making detectives suspicious about John Kums.
There were various diaries that mentioned of various people that she knew, lots of phone numbers. Also, some drug dealing type of equations were in these things as well. There's a reference to being scared of a JC, whom we believe to be John Kums. But the more digging we did, I suppose speaking to friends of Rachel, we realised that John Kums was her boss in relation to drug dealing. And we also spoke to one person who said that Rachel told them that she was going fishing with her boss, and she was looking forward to it. But going fishing seemed to be code for going away and dealing in drugs or drug type of trip. And those closest to her knew that's what the terminology meant. And we also go through the list of names of people that she knew, and obviously John Kums stood out because of his prior criminal history. Rachel's family, they knew obviously how close Rachel was with these girls in her care, and they found it very hard to believe that these girls didn't know where Rachel had gone on that Tuesday evening. These girls were very fearful. They were told by Rachel that she was gone and she'd be on a fishing trip for 48 hours at the latest sort of thing. So after that period of time, they became increasingly concerned. They did know that she went away with John Kums, but they were terrified to speak with us about it. They thought the best course of action was to keep it to themselves I think they got a bit of an idea that we were on the right track with Mr. Kums anyway. I dealt with the two girls fairly regularly over that first 2 months. I ended up taking about half a dozen statements from the youngest one, who was probably closest to Rachel. And she took a while to warm to us as well, because all she'd really known, I suppose, was she'd seen Rachel drug trafficking, and I guess police were the enemy if you're out there drug trafficking. And after a while, she decided that it was okay to divulge what she did know, and she knew a lot.
With the help of the young girl, detectives were able to trace Rachel's last movements. On the 10th of August, 6 days before her remains were found, Rachel drove the 20 minutes from Epping to Heidelberg, where she left her car, and was allegedly picked up at some nearby shops by John Kums. The last time anyone was in contact with Rachel was 6:30 that night, when she spoke to her friend Deanne on the phone. The call betrayed none of the imminent danger Rachel was in.
She'd said to me she was going fishing. She'd be back, and I said, well, because we'd planned to meet up on the Monday. And she said, no, I'll be fine, I'll be back. And I said, seemed happy and to be doing whatever it may be she was doing. It sounded to me like she was jumping in a car. She didn't seem scared. To my understanding, when Rachel was talking, she was happy about wherever she was going. So at no point did she sound threatened or anything like that. I don't believe Rachel thought that she wasn't coming back.
When questioned by police, Kums provided a seemingly solid alibi to explain his movements at the time of Rachel's disappearance. His associates corroborated his story. However, using mobile phone tracking and other techniques, detectives were quick to cast doubt on his version of events. As their suspicions grew, and in order to establish the facts, the decision was made to arrest John Kums. Also arrested were his associates, Kums' 54-year-old partner Maureen Renwick, another acquaintance Nicole Godfrey, and friend Ryan Buscema.
We believe we had sufficient evidence to arrest him and to charge him with the murder of Rachel Betts, but also the other people that we arrested at the time too, as in Maureen Renwick, Ryan Buscema and Nicole Godfrey. So it was a coordinated arrest of all of those people to get their version of events at the same time. So once we arrested him, we placed him in the vehicle, and Lee Smith said to him, the hardest part saying it. And he said, yeah, I know. She pushed my buttons, and he said, I killed her. She made me fucking angry. She taunted me. That's what he said.
Police now had Rachel's alleged killer in custody. They now had to determine exactly what had happened to her. With the suspected murderer of Rachel Betts in custody, the dark, chilling past of John Leslie Kums began to emerge. In the first of a series of interviews with the alleged killer, the detective's first task was to try and establish from Kums exactly how Rachel had met her tragic and untimely death.
No one really knows exactly what happened to Rachel. We've got Mr. Kums' version of events as to when I interviewed him. He said that they drove down there together to Phillip Island, to 3 Terry Crescent, Wilmington Heights, Nicole Godfrey's house, and that they arrived there after midnight, and that Nicole Godfrey had a cup of coffee or a cup of tea with the two of them. Mr. Kums says that after they had their coffee or whatever, Rachel went and lay in one of the rooms on the bed.
Detectives were stunned when, in an effort to explain what had happened to her, Kums claimed that Rachel was implicated in the abuse of the 2 girls she was caring for.
Mr. Kums claimed that Rachel let him know that she'd allowed for the girls to be sexually assaulted, and that she made money out of it because the girls got to pay her debts. And Kums claimed that infuriated him, and he decided to put her in a sleeper hold and strangle her. I said, well, how did you do it? And he showed with arm movements as to what he did in relation to strangling Rachel.
Kums went on to describe how he mutilated Rachel's body.
He said that she deserved to die, didn't deserve to go to leave this earth as a woman. So he says he's stabbed her repeatedly in the breast region, and we believe that was after she'd died. You had to look at it as if this was a side of beef. That's how he kind of described it. It was something where the life had gone. It's a piece of meat that he had to just make the cuts, separate the joints, treat it like that. That's how he referred to it. He did that when I interviewed him. He explained it that way, and he also explained it the same way to Maureen Renwick in a prison phone call. He said had to make something bigger, smaller. Pretty horrendous.
Another chilling version of events came from Nicole Godfrey, Kums' acquaintance, who was present in the house on the supposed night of Rachel's murder.
She talked about limbs popping and things like that she could hear, and that at one stage he asked her whether she'd like to come in and see a dissection. So she was certainly present whilst this was going on in her bathroom, and it was quite a small 3-bedroom house down there.
Despite the detail and the description, detectives questioned the veracity of Kums' version of events.
At one point, he did talk to Maureen on the phone about it, and he said something about the manner of death, and it was like one click. It was the cleanest kill ever. So you hear that and you say to yourself, well, what is that then? Is that a strangulation? Is that breaking of the neck? Or what is that? It could be I don't know.
In my mind, I saw him cutting out her tattoos on her abdomen. He also cut her breasts off. And again, we got all kinds of stories. Oh, he used 5 different knives. Oh no, he used a box cutter that you keep cutting the thing.
It's hard to believe a word that comes out of Mr. Kums' mouth. It's very difficult to know when it was that she was actually killed. There was no forensic evidence, but they did clean with bleach-based cleaning products.
God knows what he really did, or even definitely where he did it, because no DNA was recovered from the bathroom where she was supposed to have been cut up.
It came as no surprise to Sandra Betts when John Leslie Kums was charged with her daughter's murder in November 2009.
When the police asked us who did we think it would likely to be, we said John Kums, because we knew he had some kind of criminal history. And at the time, that was all I knew. I now know a great deal more about him.
There was a lot of police reports, a lot of coronial reports that we had to go through to look at Kums' past, and it's a very dark past. We were told that Kums had 2 previous convictions, and 2 major previous convictions where he'd killed 2 people.
He killed a fellow by the name of Michael Sperani in February 1984.
Michael Sperani lived in the seaside town of Mount Martha. In 1984, he was selling his car, and his potential purchaser was one John Leslie Kums. On the pretense of confirming whether the car could tow a boat, Kums hitched up a trailer and then offered Michael the chance to accompany him on a trip out to sea.
John Kums enticed Michael Sperani to come out for a ride on the boat.
It transpired that Sperani was dating one of Kums' friends, a relationship that his friend disapproved of. Kums seemingly had thought of a solution to this problem.
It appears he was assaulted on the boat, and then he was stabbed by Kums. He was thrown out into the water, and Kums then ran over him with the boat's propeller, and then after a while went up to him and pulled him up slightly, and then stabbed him some more. And Kums made a comment to his wife at the time when he later relayed what happened, and said that he stabbed him a little bit so the fish could finish him off.
"44-year-old Henry Desmond Kells was asleep in his Edith Vale home when he was attacked in the early hours of the 17th of November, 1984.
Another good friend of his by the name of Opie, it appears that Kells was socialising with Opie's landlady, and this upset Opie, and Opie complained to Kums about it, and Kums thought he'd go and fix that problem as well.
Broke into the bungalow knowing he would be asleep and drunk, and attacked him in a really vicious way. He pinned him down. There were bruises on Kells' feet and knees.
There's evidence that he's punching and that sort of thing, and then Kums went to the kitchen, got a knife, and stabbed him and killed him, and also mutilated his genitalia. We believe it's probably to try and give the impression that there'd been some sort of sexual transgression and maybe revenge had taken place, something like that, which seems to be another theme with Mr. Kums as well. He seems to blame sexual misbehaviour, or he alleges sexual misbehaviour on behalf of victims, and he did that in that occasion with Sperani, and I believe he was probably trying to give the same impression in relation to what happened with Desmond Kells as well.
In 1985, Kums was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of Henry Desmond Kells. He was granted an 11-year minimum term on appeal. At his parole hearing, the board was told that Kums did not pose a substantial threat to the community. What they weren't aware of, though, was that he had murdered Michael Sperani 8 months before killing Kells and had got away with it. Satisfied he was safe to release, Kums left prison in October 1996. Within 3 months of being paroled, Kums was arrested again and convicted of Sperani's murder. Despite being now responsible for the deaths of 2 men, but supposedly rehabilitated, he was handed a minimum term of just 10 years. By 2007, Kums was released on parole back into the community, where he started a relationship with Maureen Renwick and began dealing drugs. Just 2 years after his release, while still on parole, Rachel would be dead.
And he did try and present as the jovial, grandfatherly type figure. He was quite cunning and devious the way he operated.
To look at him, you wouldn't think he was dangerous to that extent. I'd met him twice. My first reaction to him was, well, why are you hanging out with someone that's that age?
This guy is a master manipulator. He had people wrapped around his little fingers, and he cultivated a facade. There was this nice, jolly, plump guy who would never harm a fly.
While Rachel's loved ones tried to comprehend Kums' dangerous past and began to ask questions of a justice system that let a killer out onto the streets not once, but twice, detectives were preparing to go to trial. In 2011, John Leslie Kums was about to appear in court, charged with the murder of Rachel Betts. For his victim's family, the trauma and devastation of the past 2 years was about to be played out in public.
John Leslie Kums will face the Melbourne Magistrates Court for allegedly strangling the 27-year-old and throwing her off a pier on Phillip Island.
First, you have the committal in the Magistrates Court, where they test to see whether the proceedings will be successful in the Supreme Court. It means that Kums was able to introduce things in the Magistrates Court, claims about Rachel which were untrue.
The committal process, the media report all the things that a bit sensational and made Rachel look to be a drug-using, drug-selling woman. The worst parts, I suppose, that came out from the witnesses, that was what was reported.
He claimed that Rachel had set these girls up for sex acts, for money and all this rubbish, and the girls were interviewed in the court and they said, no, that didn't happen, Rachel would never do that to us, etc. But he did succeed in besmirching her name, which was what he wanted to do. He got this rubbish into the press.
Rachel said that if he played his cards right, she could have his way with the little one, as in the young girl, the younger of the 2 girls. When I interviewed about that and told him that he didn't say that previously to me, he goes, oh, I did. Well, he didn't. We went back and checked the transcripts from the interview and he never did.
To me, it was just another excuse to paint what he'd done in a better light, like as if he was doing society a favour by what he'd done.
I don't believe that she exposed those girls to or encouraged any sort of interference of them, allowed it to happen. There's no evidence at all to suggest that, apart from what comes out of Kums' mouth, which cannot be believed at all.
Little could prepare Rachel's family for the emotional torment of being exposed to the baseless allegations about their sister, peddled by John Kums.
We had to put up with a lot of lies being told about Rachel in the media, and we weren't really allowed to say anything back or do anything back, which was very hard for a long time.
I never realised how much the journalists themselves are able to pick and choose interesting or sort of headline-grabbing elements of any given case and put it together in their own way. Because the way that cases like these are portrayed to the public have a really quite a large influence on how the public then see the victim or see the perpetrator.
The way victims and their relatives are treated in court was a shock to the Betts family, and something they have been inspired to try and change.
That's an issue I'm raising at the moment, along with the issue of having your own barrister in court to represent the victim's interests specifically as a third party. And I think that that's something that happens in a lot of countries around the world, and it needs to be looked at here. We need the pendulum to shift a bit the other way. At the moment, the victim doesn't have equal rights to the accused, and the right to counsel, I think, is a very important one.
After the committal, we were booked off for trial, so organised all the witnesses, and then on day one of the trial, he decided to plead guilty.
On the 26th of August 2011, John Leslie Kums was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility for parole for the murder of Rachel Betts. The judge ordered that his sentence would be served cumulatively with his existing term for the Sperani murder. In passing sentence, the judge described Kums as someone with a frightening predilection for murder.
I think the thing that stuck out the most was on the day of sentencing, when he was in court and they read out the sentence and he was being led from the dock out the side door, and he gave the finger up, known as the bird, to the courtroom on the way out, as if to say, well, I don't really care.
He stuck his finger up at him. Like, screw you, I killed your daughter and I'm still alive. Like, he's a monster who doesn't deserve to be alive.
It's really hard to say what justice is, isn't it? We got the best outcome that could be created in the circumstances. We got a judge who saw through all the lies and the stories and the accusations that Kums made, and who saw that this is a person who had to get a life sentence with no minimum, and he really saw it clearly for what it was, because he didn't make them concurrent. He made consecutive life sentences. It will be life followed by life, and no minimum set.
As a way of coping with the loss of her daughter, Sandra Betts has fought for a more rigorous examination of the parole system, something that is a cornerstone of the Australian legal process.
Parole is a system that enables the gradual supervised release of people from prison into the community. So typically when someone is sentenced to a term of imprisonment, they will get a minimum sentence and a maximum sentence. And what determines when they're released after serving that minimum sentence is a decision by the parole authority, the parole board, and they have to decide, is it appropriate for that person to be released?
Well, the parole system was so broken. Kums was recommended for parole on the basis that he was assessed as a low risk, a double murderer. I wouldn't have thought that that could be possible given the sentence he had. But because he was assessed as low risk and the parole board didn't question this, he was assigned to a junior corrections person. He wasn't monitored very much. So there weren't the checks, the cross-checking on what he's saying is true or not true, and what he's doing is what he's saying he's doing, what accommodation is the appropriate accommodation.
What we have seen in Victoria most recently is some very serious failures that have shone a light on the parole system, and that's been a good thing. It shouldn't have taken those horrific crimes for this kind of reform to happen. There's been a substantial increase in the Parole Board's budget. There's been improvements in the quality of information that is being presented to the Parole Board to enable it to make proper decisions around managing the risk to the community. We saw something like 10,000 decisions being made every year with only a few minutes for the Parole Board to consider each one of those decisions. When you consider the potential risks involved and the importance around those decisions, it really was an unsustainable practice that we had. That's now changing, and that's a positive thing.
The death of Rachel Betts and other high-profile murders has made the Australian justice system question itself and its processes. But despite the improvements that have and continue to be made, it is little comfort for Rachel's friends and family, who still have to live their lives without her.
The grief that comes with the sort of experience where your daughter is murdered is really intense and invasive, and it pervades daily life. Most mornings I will wake up with some thoughts of Rachel, and it's 6 years down the track. And there's always the important times, that her birthday, she'd be 33 now. It's awful. And I know it's not just me that's affected, my children have been very affected.
I miss my confidant. I miss the support, the unconditional support. I was looking forward to her teaching me how to drive and being there when I graduated high school. I have a sense of what she's lost as well, though, as what I've lost. I've lost my sister, my hero, but she's lost the potential of a full life.
It makes me really both angry and sad that she didn't get to see me become an adult myself, and then to be able to have that relationship with her on a different level, and like every new step I take in life, she doesn't get to know about that or to see that. And you see me become someone that we probably could have been even closer now than we were before. And I'm also kind of irrationally scared of overtaking her age. To become older than my older sister is really strange but scary to me.
I dread time moving forward. I remember dates and numbers, anniversaries, and I feel more hopeless and frustrated that every year goes by is another year further away from what happened.